economic force, because Canada and the United States, that would really be something. You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and you take a look at what that looks like, and it would also be much better for national security. Don't forget, we basically protect Canada.
The United States has cautioned Canada against backing out of its purchase of American-made F-35 fighter jets, warning it of potential fallout if the deal is scrapped.
I think fascinating because it's not just Canada, right? Some other countries are also reviewing their contracts to buy these very expensive fighter jets from the U.S. over trade concerns.
U.S. weapons manufacturer Lockheed Martin is reportedly pitching new jobs for Canada, but that offer depends on Ottawa sticking to its plan to buy Lockheed's F-35 fighter jets.
Hey, welcome back to my channel. Today we're jumping straight into one of the most sensitive questions hanging over Canada's defense policy. A contract worth tens of billions, once celebrated as a milestone of modernization, is now being wielded as leverage. Washington isn't hiding its stance. If Ottawa backs away from the F-35 deal, the U.S. says the fallout will be immediate. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra has already warned that canceling the purchase could directly threaten NORAD, since the command relies on shared aircraft and systems to stay seamless. And it doesn't stop there. Behind closed doors, U.S. officials have hinted at serious consequences, not only for defense, but also for trade. Negotiations that once seemed routine are now being described as irritated by a single contract. Even Bombardier executives worry that American retaliation could land squarely on their projects in Wichita, Kansas. So here is the cliffhanger. Is this still about fighter jets, or has the F-35 become a test of how much pressure Washington can put on Ottawa? Before we dive in, tap that like button. It tells YouTube this content matters. But the pressure from Washington is only half the story. Even if Canada wanted to keep the F-35 program on track, the numbers themselves are becoming harder to defend. What was once promoted as a symbol of modernization has now turned into a financial black hole. The original estimate of 19 billion Canadian dollars has already jumped to at least 27.7 billion, and some projections warn it could climb as high as 33.2 billion. The version Canada is set to receive, the F-35 Block 4, is facing delays of up to 5 years, with development overruns adding another $6 billion to the bill. And that still doesn't cover everything. Canada's Auditor General Karen Hogan has cautioned that current figures exclude the cost of maintenance facilities, weapons integration, and long-term support. Those could tack on an additional $5.5 billion. When all the math is done, the real price per jet could approach $150 million. A figure that raises the question of whether Ottawa is buying capability or simply burning through its defense budget. So the choice is no longer just political, it's financial. Can Canada truly afford to tie such a large portion of its defense spending to a single platform? If you've made it this far, consider subscribing. It's how we keep uncovering what others won't say. And while the F-35 program looks increasingly like a drain on Canada's defense budget, another option is quietly reshaping the debate. Saab, the Swedish aerospace company, has presented an alternative that speaks directly to Ottawa's long-standing concerns about industrial sovereignty and economic independence. The Gripen E proposal is more than just an aircraft. Saab has pledged final assembly in Halifax, full transfer of intellectual property, and access to mission data, an offer designed to give Canada not only planes but also long-term control over the technology behind them. On paper, the economic footprint looks significant. As many as 6,000 jobs per year spread across 4 decades, paired with a promise of 100% industrial offsets. Beyond economics, the Gripen is engineered with Canada's geography in mind. Its design allows it to operate from short, icy runways without specialized infrastructure, a detail that resonates in a country where Arctic conditions define much of the defense challenge. Saab has also tied the deal to broader investment, including research centers, sensor development, and cyber resilience hubs in Canadian cities. Elements clearly aimed at reinforcing the argument that defense spending should translate into domestic capability, not dependency. The question is whether such promises can outweigh the strategic pressure coming from Washington, or if they will remain attractive but ultimately secondary to alliance politics. Yet the debate isn't only about budgets or jobs, it's also about the technological future Canada wants to buy into. For Washington, the F-35 is more than a fighter jet. It is often described as the bridge to the next generation, the eventual F-47. By staying in the program, Ottawa would remain plugged into a pipeline of American innovation that could shape air power for decades. But numbers on performance complicate that vision. The F-35's mission-capable rate has hovered between 30 and 50%, a figure that raises concerns about reliability in real-world scenarios. In contrast, Saab's Gripen E is reported to achieve readiness levels closer to 80 to 90%, making availability one of its strongest selling points. Then there is the cost of keeping the planes in the air. Analysts estimate that flying a Gripen costs around $8,000 per hour, while the F-35 requires anywhere from $35,000 to $47,000. Over a fleet's lifetime, the gap could amount to billions in operating expenses. Flexibility also enters the equation. The Gripen is designed for rapid turnaround, capable of being rearmed in as little as 10 to 20 minutes with a small ground crew. For a country like Canada, with vast distances and dispersed bases, that level of adaptability is hard to ignore. So the clash is not just about aircraft, it is about two very different technological philosophies. One prioritizes integration into an American-led ecosystem. The other emphasizes independence, affordability, and operational resilience. All of this, however, circles back to an even larger issue: alliances. For Canada, the fighter jet debate is not just about technology or economics. It is also about what kind of security relationship the country wants with its closest partners. Sticking with the F-35 reinforces Canada's integration with the United States and NATO. It means Ottawa can continue to participate fully in shared missions, exercises, and upgrades without gaps in compatibility. In a world where collective defense depends on synchronized systems, the value of that seamlessness cannot be underestimated. But choosing Saab's Gripen would signal a different path. It would give Canada a measure of industrial autonomy, yet risk leaving it outside the central ecosystem of NATO's next-generation air power. Some observers describe this as choosing irrelevance, because upgrades, mission data files, and cloud-based systems that define modern warfare are tightly controlled by Washington. That raises another question of dependency. Several Canadian officials have voiced concern that F-35 squadrons, while advanced, may also become technical hostages. Software updates, mission planning, and even certain maintenance functions require U.S. approval. In effect, Canada would be fielding a fleet it cannot fully operate without outside assistance. So, the dilemma deepens. Should Ottawa accept deeper reliance on the U.S. as the price of strategic alignment, or risk partial isolation in order to preserve sovereignty over its own defense decisions? If financial strain and alliance politics weren't enough, logistics make the prospect of changing course even more daunting. Canada is already locked into buying the first 16 F-35s, which means a complete reversal is off the table. That leaves the possibility of a split fleet, a scenario that looks flexible on paper, but in reality doubles costs. Training two sets of pilots, maintaining different simulators, and stocking parts for separate aircraft would quickly erode efficiency. The Air Force itself has warned there is no military sense in dividing such a small order. Worse still, integrating Gripen into NORAD would demand costly adjustments to U.S. systems, likely wiping out any savings. The nightmare isn't choosing F-35 or Gripen, it's ending up with both and carrying the drawbacks of each. The fighter jet debate may be the most visible flashpoint, but it is far from an isolated case. In many ways, it symbolizes a broader rethinking of how Canada defines its place within the global security order. Under Prime Minister Mark Carney, Ottawa has been testing the waters of diversification, looking for ways to avoid the vulnerability that comes with placing too many strategic bets on a single partner. One of the clearest signs of this recalibration is the decision to source early warning radar from Australia. The AOTHR program not only introduces advanced over-the-horizon capabilities, but also sends a signal that critical defense systems do not have to flow exclusively from the United States. Choosing Canberra over Washington is a subtle but telling indication that Canada is willing to widen its circle of trusted suppliers. The same pattern is visible in the competition for a new generation of submarines. Rather than defaulting to U.S. TAO shipbuilders, Ottawa has narrowed the field to German and South Korean options. These choices highlight a preference for partners who can offer cutting-edge technology while also respecting Canada's desire for industrial participation and flexible terms. elements that might not be as easily negotiable with U.S. contractors. Beyond procurement, the shift is also diplomatic. Foreign Minister Melanie Joly's outreach to the European Union reflects a search for a broader security umbrella, one that could balance, rather than replace, Canada's traditional reliance on Washington. By cultivating European ties, Ottawa is effectively creating fallback options, ensuring that future policy swings in Washington will not leave Canada without alternatives. This cautious repositioning is underpinned by a deeper anxiety in Ottawa's policy circles. Some lawmakers and analysts argue that the U.S. should be treated not as an unconditional ally, but as a powerful actor whose interests may diverge sharply from Canada's own. From this perspective, building parallel relationships with Australia, Europe, and teamed Asian partners is less about breaking with the United States and more about hedging against a volatile environment. In essence, the fighter jet debate has become a window into a larger conversation. How much independence does Canada truly need in order to secure its future? And how far is it willing to go in rewriting the balance of its alliances? At the end of the day, this isn't just a fighter jet contract. It's a test of how Canada defines its place in the world. Staying with the F-35 keeps Ottawa closely tied to Washington and NATO, preserving seamless cooperation but locking the country into steep financial costs and long-term dependency. Shifting to the Gripen would bring greater industrial autonomy and local control, but at the price of losing access to the shared upgrade cycle central decision-making of the alliance. The stakes stretch far beyond aircraft. The choice will shape Canada's role in Arctic security, influence its trade ties across the Atlantic, and affect how much trust partners place in the broader Western alliance system. In that sense, the F-35 versus Gripen debate is less about engines and wings, and more about whether Canada secures its future through alignment or through independence. So the question is this: will Canada choose to buy safety through dependence, or take the risk of carving out a more independent role in a shifting global order? Thanks for watching. And if this resonated with you, don't forget to like and subscribe. Every click fuels the truth.